I've been more busy this year than any other time. Ironically, I don't post anything. Basically, it's just been playing catch up since 2020. I think that with the people who want to jump into it, it's good that they have like an enthusiasm, but it's like you're thinking too far forward, but you could just start with what you have now.
The nerd in my brain really wants to know, like, how do you know what over a terabyte of footage is?
I've been training this system since I was a kid. It's called Just Remember It.
Oh my God. Do you have a background in music at all? Because there is a rhythm to editing that I think aligns with the rhythm of music.
You know, it's like the saying, if you always go with your gut, you have shit for brains. You know, how many things do you miss out on because you don't question yourself?
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day. We are here live on Discord. It is 6 p.m. Eastern. Like always, I am Kevin Lieber, and with me is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and I've come up with a new scam with the Main Gear PC. I've decided to tell people that I'm bilingual now that I can use PC and Mac. I think that's fair. I think, it's 2022. I don't think you have to speak two different languages to be bilingual. You just have to use two different operating systems. I'm completely comfortable, though. This is the first week of 100% work on this machine, and I'm past the point where I'm mixing up Control C and V with Command from the Mac and all that. So no, it's amazing. Everything that I said in the past is still going strong. But I want to really quickly do a shout out to Dan the Latch. You mentioned it before we started recording, but he picked up an award for his short film script at a film festival in Boston this weekend. It's been pretty interesting to see him go through kind of development with filmmaking and then get recognition for it at such an early stage. So just congratulations there. And if anything good is going on with you, let us know in the Discord. We like to hear it. We like to see your progress.
Yeah. Share what you're making. Share how you're meaning things, living up to the mantra. Real quick, next week we have Bobby Duke we'll be talking to, and then following Bobby Duke, we will have Ian Hecox from Smosh, which will be an awesome episode to round out October. That'll be our spooky Halloween episode, is talking about Smosh. But let's get to tonight's guest.
Yeah, and it's a miracle of fate that tonight's guest was born in the 1990s in the relatively free society of Canada. Instead of 1,000 years ago, he'd have surely been burned at the stake on suspicion of a sort of wizardry that makes Gandalf the White look like an inebriated magician at a children's birthday party. In the sphere of science media, Mr. Wizard walked so that NileRed could be shot out of the Large Hadron Collider. For decades, chemistry has operated somewhere on a bounded continuum of blowing things up and making baking soda and vinegar volcanoes. I met Nigel about 3 years ago, and we talked for 10 minutes about all sorts of crazy video ideas, and one of them was making moonshine out of toilet paper. And a year later, nearly 10 million people had watched him actually do it. He's made transparent wood, formed metal crystals from Pepto-Bismol, he's turned aspirin into Tylenol, and his extraction series has removed the caffeine from Red Bull, separated the urea from his own pee, and drawn out the lidocaine from anal lube. Kevin has the best video on YouTube about the origin of the color blue. Nigel has the best video on making it. The post-Renaissance period ushered in the decline of alchemy, but NileRed's YouTube videos appear to have renewed it. Despite such fringe experiments, Nigel's got a fairly traditional academic background in chemistry, and both his degrees and his delightfully supportive family have resulted in 500 million views on YouTube and nearly 5 million subscribers. But that's not even the big one. He's got over 10 million on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, it doesn't matter. Nigel's content translates perfectly to every platform we've got. So Nigel, let's start off with a really simple question. In your now near decade of making chemistry interesting, Is it more satisfying to create or to destroy?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for that intro. That was actually really, really nice and also really good. Yeah. So your question is it more fun to create or destroy? That's an interesting question. I feel like they're both fun in their own way sometimes, right? But it's always easier to destroy than it is to create. So I feel like maybe destroying is more fun, but creating is more rewarding.
I like that. I could definitely see that. What have been some of the most fun things you've created and some of the most fun things that you've destroyed? I'll say just real quick, I'll never get tired of watching you pour something on a fabric and have it just disintegrate. just melt away into nothingness. I don't know what it is about that is like amazing every single time.
So it's funny, like when you asked what was my favorite thing I've destroyed, and my first thought was like, I don't know. But now that you mentioned, disintegrating things, it jogged my memory. So probably like one of my favorite ones was the chicken in Piranha, because it just like we took a chicken drumstick, I guess, put it in hot Piranha, which is a mixture of sulfuric acid and hydrogen peroxide. And it kind of just, I think it was in like 2 minutes, it was just gone, which I didn't even think it was going to do that. So that shocked me. So I was impressed by what it was able to do. And also we dissolved, years ago, probably in my parents' backyard, I dissolved a hot dog. That was the first time I destroyed something with Piranha. And then I did it again later for a short. So probably like just dissolving and destroying food. And then maybe when I was younger, I blew a lot of stuff up with firecrackers. But I kind of, I don't know, one day I just kind of got scared of firecrackers and I stopped working with explosives altogether. I think the idea is fun, but I don't know, the danger factor is less fun. And I'm not really like super, I don't feel like I'm super qualified to be handling a lot of explosive stuff. Which is why I don't.
It's expected too. Yeah.
Sorry?
When you have, it's like the result, you see it coming when there's some kind of explosive. Like there's no element of surprise or coolness. A really big or powerful explosion or something is neat. When I was a kid, I used to buy cap gun rolls of caps at a store in town and then hit them with hammers to explode
Classic,
rocks,
yeah.
like an extremely primitive mining operation. I like that. But I knew it was going to happen. That's why I did it, right? There was never once anything that was at all surprising. And you're talking about food disintegrating. Even if you know it's going to disintegrate, nobody knows what that's going to look like or what it's going to feel like to watch food disappear, because we don't see that anywhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Like when I did the chicken one, I thought it was going to be like in a cartoon where, they put whatever. Bro, yeah, in some sort. I'm sure I've seen a cartoon when I was younger where someone fell in acid and they came out and they were just bones or something. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was just going to be left with a bone, but then it dissolved the bone as well. So then that actually did really surprise me.
Wasn't that the plot of Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Wasn't there like a acidic goop or something that they were going to dunk all of the tunes into to murder them all, which is so grim now thinking about it. It's kind of an insanely morbid thing, but I'm pretty sure if anybody's watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think that was sort of the big danger that Christopher Lloyd or whoever was trying to disintegrate cartoon characters in acid.
I don't remember exactly the story because I watched it so long ago, but I do remember, it was definitely a pretty morbid, something morbid going on.
Disturbing.
What's it feel like to know that if Jeffrey Dahmer had watched your videos, he would have never been caught?
No, it's like, that's the one thing. It's like, you mean in terms of like the dissolving things in acid?
Yeah. He would have just like upped his game to a point where
it's so like, so to discourage people of trying to dispose of bodies using the videos that I've made, the Piranha releases just a lot of gas. And it's like, since it's hot acid and peroxide, if you don't have a fume hood, it'll fill the room and you'll start choking and your eyes will burn. Like you can't really just do it indoors. And then on a scale, from a drumstick to like a full person, It's just the amount of all the supplies you need would be insane. And it would just probably, I bet, like, there's no way people would not be running out of at least some part of the apartment. People would be leaving because their eyes are burning and they're someone's calling 911. Like it would actually be really, it would alert people if you tried to do it that way.
Yeah. I suppose you'd have to have a seriously industrial setup to deal with anything on scale.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, exactly. And then once you have that, it's like, I don't know what you're doing if you're that set up to be dealing with those kinds of things.
I don't know. I'd like to stay on this topic because you see that as a thing in movies, right? Where the mob or some superhero villain or something, they'll dispose of bodies this way. But is this one of those things that we can kind of debunk here, that in order to actually do that, you would need some really advanced hood system or air filtration? Like, what? You can't just dump them into a barrel and close the barrel, right? Would it explode? What would happen?
So I guess the question is like what you're using to dispose of. I mean, it's so morbid, but yeah, if you're trying to dispose of a body, like what would you do? I think piranha, it's kind of like flashy because things disappear so quickly. But the downside, like I said, is it produces just fumes. It's dangerous. I don't even know where you get that much peroxide. Sulfuric acid might be easier, but it's like even just getting everything, you'd probably, because peroxide's used to make explosives and other things. So it's like if you buy that much peroxide, I think you just go on a list somewhere. So it's like it's not something that you're really going to be like you're going to be raising red flags with just your purchase in general. So it's like you have to somehow buy a lot of chemicals without anyone thinking it's weird. And I feel like there's pretty standard things that I've read online. Like people say like just a vat of lye or something. So just like drain cleaner, basically. I feel like something like that is probably, I think people do actually do that. I don't have any idea. But like that will get rid of all the fleshy part, but you'll still be left with a bunch of bones. You have to like, I don't know what you do with that.
They can get away with procuring some of those basic things because they have normal farm applications.
Yes.
You know, things like big orders of lime and lye and all of that.
Yes,
I mean,
that totally is viable. But like I said, I think I could be totally wrong, but I think if you do soak an animal or something in lye, I think the bones aren't really attacked by it. I could be wrong. Also, one other thing I should mention about the piranha is it has to be really hot too. So the piranha is probably like 200 C or more. I don't know what it actually is.
So it's spicy.
Like you'd have to have that much acid and peroxide, and it has to be really hot as well. I think at the end of the day, if you have a body, it's going to be that's your you already have a major issue, and it's just like what's the least bad solution? There's no real like ideal way that you're just going to be able to escape that problem.
Rolling it up in a rug and dumping it into the harbor.
Well, I think actually like the one thing I saw, I used to watch when I edited videos, I used to watch a lot of criminal court things where they would just start from like the crime and go through. It was like real court cases. You'd see the trial and everything. And the guys who actually like basically got away with it every time, they didn't do anything crazy. They just literally drove out into the desert and just buried the body somewhere. And the desert's just so big that you just don't have the manpower to find anybody. So I
think it's like anything else. Like even if you're cooking a meal, the more complicated you try to make it, the worse it's going to be. Like the best thing you can do is like pan fry a steak, and keep it simple.
Well, that's the thing. Like they're like the guy just drove out whoever they murdered, just dumped them, dug a hole, dumped them in the desert. And even though the prosecutors knew that they were like 900% sure that the guy did it, they're like, we have no body. Like we don't, like he claimed that she just disappeared and never came back. And they're like, we can't prove that wrong. Yeah. So it's just like, and his entire big operation was just, wasn't very complex. There was no like buying chemicals or doing anything crazy.
Right.
Isn't that what they did in Breaking Bad? I'm pretty sure just burying the bodies in the desert was what they did in Breaking Bad.
Maybe, yeah. So maybe they watched, they watched the same show that I did.
Like Dexter who would put them in garbage bags and then take them out to the water and dump them out from his boat.
Even in the show, the bodies came back and then he had a problem.
Right.
But I guess it's like you also have to have a convenient desert or large amount of wilderness. Like the desert's convenient because you can drive over it. Whereas like where I live, there's a lot of forested area. You can't just, you're not going to drag a body like 50 kilometers up a small mountain. So it's just like, if you don't have a desert around you, maybe just don't murder people. that's the takeaway.
Yeah. No, that makes sense though. I didn't think that you could just drive extremely far and remote in a desert the way, you can't do that in a forest. If you had an ATV, it seems like you could go pretty far in the woods.
But it's cold. The things don't decompose at the same rate the further north you go. I think the desert offers a really nice decompositional advantage here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it just breaks it down really quick too. That makes a lot of sense.
At least quicker than the tundra.
But I feel like the idea is like if you just bury them and no one ever finds it, doesn't really matter if they ever. Actually, that's not true because I did see another. I think one of the other things was the body took forever to break down, and then an animal digs it up, and then somehow the bones surface, and now there's a whole investigation because some hiker found something.
Yeah,
so maybe
the coyote dug up a femur.
Yeah. The desert is key.
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
But I was going to say, you also asked what is the most fun or thing I like the most that I've created.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I think back to all the projects that I did, and it's almost like I forgot that I did half of them. That's why I said it was nice. As you were mentioning all the things that I did, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh yeah.
Well, you've been doing it for a lot of years too.
Yeah.
It's not like all those videos were packed into the last 12 months.
Yeah. I haven't posted anything this year.
That was going to be one of my questions that I wrote down, is that I'm really interested in to hear what you're working on because taking a look at your main channel, it's been 7 months since there's been an upload there. A few months, I believe, on Nile Blue, a couple months on shorts, but I know that, you've done a bunch of shorts this year and your TikTok is huge, but just in general, and you have the Safety Third podcast, which definitely needs a shout out. So if you want to hear, some crazy creators who I think have had almost everybody from the Safety Third podcast on TCU at this point. Almost. We might be missing someone, but we'll figure that out. We'll have them on here at some point. But the fact is I wondered what you've been up to essentially, because there's been a bit of a break from your content uploading.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because when I look back and I realize I've known I haven't posted anything in a long time. I've been more busy this year than any other time, but then ironically, I don't post anything. So yeah, from an outside perspective, it doesn't seem, I mean, people are confused. A lot of people are confused about what I'm doing. And then even when I look back and I haven't posted anything, I'm like, what have I been doing? It was basically, I guess I'll give like a rundown of what happened this year. And I guess I'll lead into what the plans are going forward. Kind of, I mean, actually, I think to explain why I haven't posted anything in 7 months, we actually have to go back to like 2020. And the basic thing is at the end of 2019, when, sorry, I made that video like about toilet paper moonshine, and some of the other ones that Matt mentioned. I had a pretty big backlog of videos. So leading into 2020, it allowed me to kind of like work on longer projects while still posting consistently. But then right around the end of 2020, I ran out of a backlog. Because the videos were taking, I was posting on almost a monthly basis, but they were taking 2 to 3 months to film and produce. So it's like, you kind of just can't keep up with that. And then I was planning to move. So I was like spending a lot of my time looking for new offices, planning, doing like a bunch of, non-YouTube things. Then when we finally did move, I had nowhere to work for like 3 months. So that was the beginning of 2021. So when I posted that transparent wood video, that was it. Like I posted it and was like, okay, I have nothing else filmed. And then like kind of since then, it's been trying to develop a video and then post it. But it would take so long to develop and then post it that I would have to do it in real time. Otherwise, I would leave like a 7-month gap. But then we're also working on shorts, which I wanted to do because I felt there was a lot of topics I wanted to cover. But basically, it's just been playing catch up since 2020. And then after I posted a video this year in like February, I again had nothing in the backlog. And then we had a huge amount of shorts we wanted to make. And then once we were done that, I'm like, I still have no videos to post. And that was like June or July. So it's like basically since June, I've just been filming and preparing main channel videos and filming for the Nile Blue. So it's like,
at a certain point, you're just going to run out of science. You're just going to reach the end of it. You're just going to hit a wall and just be like, okay, there's no more science.
That's it. That's what I did think that for a while, but it's like, especially because I had such a long hiatus of not filming basically anything. So when I did start again in June, being like, I'm actually going to film more main channel videos, I did wonder if once I filmed like a few that I had on the back burner for a while, that I'm like, I would have no more ideas. But since then, like as I've done it, more ideas come to you like as you're working on stuff. So right now I'm working, I think of like 5 or 6 videos. I finished 2 of them. And then there's like 4 that are partially done. But then I have like 5 others that I want to work on, which I think that just you add all that up and it's probably like 2 years of work. So I have no shortage for the main channel.
I think that's an important side point too, is that when you feel like you're completely stuck on a thing, paradoxically, the solution is to do stuff because you just plain encounter other ideas and topics, and like you can't read about a subject and not go down tangents. It is impossible. Literally everybody does this and everybody knows it, that if you read one Wikipedia entry, 2 hours later, you're going to find yourself 17 degrees removed with something probably very weird. And that happened because that's just the way it works. You pull on the thread and you keep pulling and you just see where you go. And I think it's like that for everything. If you don't know, like when people talk about writer's block and things like that, just write something. It doesn't have to be the thing that you want to be working on. Do something else. Just get moving, get doing something, and it kind of takes care of itself most of the time.
No, yeah, I totally agree. Like a lot of the video ideas that I've come up with, I'd get people asking me like, how did you think of that? And I can see from their perspective. They think I'm just kind of like, sitting in, maybe going to bed, just, thinking before I fall asleep. And I just go and I just think of this idea. And the answer is like, no, it's usually there's some other related project that either I wanted to work on. And then, like you said, I go on Wikipedia and then I'm 15 pages later or 15, layers deep. That's when you start to form these other ideas because you're just kind of doing things.
Yeah, you're forced to think about things that you were not thinking about 10 minutes ago.
And I think what's also interesting about just from from the science perspective is a lot of the ideas that I want to do, I'm limited by my own kind of expertise and knowledge. But,
Mhm.
and so, sorry, and a lot of projects are very daunting because I would read about them and you just read what goes into it and you just go, that's impossible. I can't do that. So, like today, I spent a lot of time, I've looked at it on and off, is like making neodymium magnets.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, there are so many steps and like processes I've never heard about. But what I know from my experience is once I've done it, all of that becomes familiar. And then when there's another project that comes along, I can then use all of the tools I bought, the machines I bought, and the skills I learned
Mhm.
to then there's ideas that you never thought were even possible because you've gained like this previous knowledge. So I find a lot of my projects are like that, where like I can
Yeah.
only come up with the idea because I did another random project that was somewhat related.
Yeah, it's scaffolding, essentially. You
Mhm.
talked about this in a video that I really, really liked. So I wanted to bring this up because it's
Mm.
on this exact topic, in which you had mentioned that people would approach you and say, "Hey, man, I just got $2,000. I want to get into, chemistry. What should I buy?"
Mm.
and and I get that when you're really enthusiastic about something, and maybe you're younger and you just you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you just want to dive right into a thing and just automatically be the next NileRed. That's kind of the thrust
Mm.
of doing a thing, and you're really excited about it. But reality is like it just does not work that way. And I thought that you articulated that
Mm.
really eloquently in your video, where you were saying, like, you really just start with one thing. And actually we spoke with Jabril last week, who had a really similar message when it came to game creation and coding, where he
Oh,
would
right.
make a
Yeah.
thing, he would get it to some sort of point in which he was, I don't know, kind of bored with it, or felt like he took it as far as he could. And then he had another idea and he would work on that for a little
Mm.
while, and he would pick up a couple of new skills with that. He would throw that away and make another completely different type of game. And then all of a sudden, like you said, piece by piece, the scaffold builds. And now you can utilize all of those things that you learned along the way. And all of a sudden, you have at least some sort of breadth of knowledge to draw from. So I think it's a really important message, especially for younger creators to hear, who do want to just level up instantly and become, who is the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour thing?
Mm.
Like instantly buy,
Yeah.
like, let me just purchase X, Y, and Z and I'll have 10,000 hours worth of experience. Like, okay, it doesn't work that way. You have to start somewhere small on one project. And then, like you said, who knows what sort of light bulbs go off in your head along the way to take you down a path that you never would have ever thought of, just sitting in your computer chair dreaming of doing a thing.
Mhm. No, I totally agree. And I also think like the video you're referencing, I think, is one of the early Nile blues when I'm just sitting in a chair talking, I think.
Hey, we're
Uh,
all just sitting in a chair talking right now. It's okay.
I
There's
was
no
saying
shame.
it was a certified original. I think that with the people who want to jump into it, it's good that they have like like an enthusiasm. But I think along with like everything you said, it's also there's this idea that it's kind of like when people buy a gym membership because they want to work out. But so it's like, I'm going to commit to this. And then kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, you're thinking too far forward, but you could just start with what you have now. So like I said, instead of just, jogging around the block or going for a walk, you end up being like, I'm going to commit to a year membership at the gym, because it's just kind of like a motivational thing too. So I think, yeah, that's just, I think, is another factor where people get enamored by the video that they see, and they're like, I have a bunch of money. And then they think if they buy all this equipment, that'll just make cool projects happen. But they could do a cool project with like a cup. Like they don't need to spend very much money at all. But the hard part is the motivation. So it's like, if you buy all this stuff, then you'll probably feel in your head that you'll be more motivated. But in reality, you just need to get up and do something with what you have right now. And that's, I think, is the hardest point of entry for most people, for just most things in general. And like, I experience it with every single project I work on, because I don't know, I start knowing nothing about the subject. And it's like, all I think in my head is it's often like, I want the end result, but I don't really want to do it because it's so daunting, all of the different things. Yeah, I mean, that was just like a point I wanted to make.
This is another thing where I feel like almost everything works this way.
Mm.
What that process that you're describing, I mean, there are two types of motivation. I think it can work if you do something like buy the gym membership and then effectively guilt yourself into being motivated to do it. But think about what's going on in your head when that happens versus a really organic, like meaningful motivation that develops out of, hey, I did a really cool thing with a Dixie cup. Next time I'm going to do something better and better. And this is something that I have really slowly transitioned into. It's taken 20 years for me to finally understand that it works this way. And I talk in the Discord a lot about cleaning up the property that I live on. 20 years ago, I would have, bought all of these things and then, slowly use them and whatever. Now I do literally everything I can with what I have. When I've maxed that out and I cannot do anything else with it, then I get the next thing that will allow me to do the next thing. And I don't go beyond that. The only time I'll go more than one step in advance is if there's some like incredible deal that I can't pass up. Then I'll get something that I'll know I'll use 6 months from now. But generally, no, I do what I need to do and make the best of that and have a great time with it. And I tend to learn a lot at a good normal pace too. The knowledge and experience that I acquire when I do it that way is the right process. So I'm absolutely ready for whatever that next step is when I come to it. It doesn't sound like a big difference to do it one way as opposed to the other, but it really is. Like it's shockingly different. And I just wish that I'd internalized that process a really long time ago. I would be when I was your age, I would have potentially have made something of myself instead of still being stuck in Bonerville.
Bonerville sounds like a cool place. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, it's not bad. The property taxes are low in Bonerville. It's a good place. Good schools too. Very good place to live, raise a family.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the biggest thing that YouTube kind of taught me, because I still am, I say to a certain degree, just a procrastinator, but in a way that like you convince yourself you're not procrastinating. And I find that what YouTube taught me was like, I think it's more important to do something like just right now to get the momentum to start whatever you want than it is to like try to, like I said, buy all these chemical supplies, do all this stuff. Because in my mind, that's actually a form of procrastination. The scary part is actually doing something, but it's like, you know how to buy stuff. You can just do it from your computer. You don't have to do anything. But what's more important is for you to just do anything now. And I do that with my projects. Some of them I'm like, this project, just thinking about it feels impossible and overwhelming. So what I'll do is I'll just film like some B-roll. I'll just go in and just film me holding something. And I don't even know why, just having like the file on my computer, like a file folder with the project name, I'm like, oh, I started the project. It's not that hard like anymore. And it gives me the momentum to then just continue and push forward with the rest of the project.
Yeah, I love that approach. I've talked about that approach before, and I actually have heard people who say that they have the opposite approach. But
really?
But everybody is different. But your approach works for me as well. It's like I just need to get. It sounds counterintuitive because when I was a kid, I learned from choose your own adventure games that if you have like a hard dragon, a medium dragon, and an easy dragon to fight, the choice is that you fight the hard dragon first because you will have enough energy left over from that battle to fight the medium and the easy dragon. However, if you start with like the easy dragon and work your way up, by the time you get to hard dragon, you are going to die because you're too tired from fighting easy
you're worn out.
And medium dragon. I take the opposite approach when it comes to work. Like I really need to get the easy dragon out of the way so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And then I will get the medium dragon out of the way so I don't have to think about it. So then all I have left to do is hard dragon.
Yeah.
That's all I have left to think about. It's all I have to do to accomplish my goal of the day. Is like if I could just get a full day of no distractions, no other dragons but hard dragon, that's the way that I know that I'll get it done. And that's the way that I've worked for years.
I think it really depends on just, I guess, like what type of work you do. So it's like, I could see it some people like doing it the other way, like it makes more sense. But at least for me, when it depends on what project it is, but there's usually just so many things I have to like, just thinking about the project overwhelms me. So then my response usually is just to do nothing. I just go like, I'll do it on Friday, like, or I'll do it later in the week. Today, I don't have time today. But if I just start with anything, suddenly it's like suddenly you're like you get motivated to actually continue it, because now I would say like you're in the project, whereas before you're just kind of like pushing the entire entity away. But once you're kind of in it, it's, I don't know, it's easier to then even just continue forward on the small pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's extremely useful for people to hear this from someone like you, who is extremely successful at what you do, but at the same time, like you're having these battles. It's not like you wake up and you just flip a switch and you're cranking out this content. Like it just doesn't work that way. It works that way for pretty much nobody. So I think people often get discouraged because perhaps they don't have the motivation to start a project or to see it through. And I think that there is a learning curve and a discipline. And sometimes just you have to tell that voice in your head to be quiet and just, all right, I'm just going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but for me, I always feel better afterwards. I always feel better after I accomplish the thing that I was putting off. It's like, oh, what a relief. It's done. I did the thing.
Because it kind of just sits in the back of your mind. And kind of like what you just said, you have to ignore that inner thought process, because it's like, even for me, a lot of the projects that I start, I have no idea if they're going to work out. Like I have literally no clue. So it's like you're dumping a lot of money into it, and then you're just going to be dumping time. And it's like the one that I posted this year, the gloves to hot sauce video, that took me like a year and a half to commit to it, because I was like only 50% sure that I wouldn't spend a month and a half on it and just it wouldn't go. I just wouldn't have a video. So then it's like I did like little parts of it until I got up to the hard part, and then I just fully committed to doing it. But a lot of my projects, they will take like 2 years to actually do, just because there's so many parts that I get to, and it just hurts my brain to have to get past them. And then like months later, I will do them, and then I get another part that I'm like, oh, this just sucks. And then I'll come back like months later, because they're just problems I don't know how to fix. Like I just hit a wall. I don't know what to do next. And then there's the whole mess of when you're done, then you have to edit everything, which is another massive nightmare.
Yeah, when you put it all together, it's like the kids in South Park with World of Warcraft. They finally beat the guy who's ruining the game for them, and then it's like, now what do we do? They're like, oh, I guess we play the game.
Yeah, exactly.
So you do the whole video, and then you get to do the whole video.
Exactly. That's the kind of like, I mean, that's a good way to describe it. I will, like, after I made the hot sauce video, I was like, yes, it actually worked. And then you're like, oh God, now I have to put this together in a coherent video. Because I now had like footage over, I guess, a year and a half or something. And then you have it's just like, I think it's over a terabyte of just random videos, and you have to like go over all of them and put it all together. I don't dislike doing it. It's just a whole other challenge. But at least I know everything worked out. So there's not this like stress in me that I'm spending a lot of time and it won't become something.
The conscientious nerd in my brain really wants to know how you organize that. Like, how are you labeling these files? Like, how do you know what over a terabyte of footage is when you go to look at it a year and a half later? You must have a system.
Okay, my system is one I developed. I've been training this system since I was a kid. It's called Just Remember It.
Oh my God. Really?
No, so I write down key things, but the one thing is, since I've never been somebody who, I don't know why, I just can't use like a calendar or I just never check it. So I just would always, even in university and stuff, I just remembered when my exams are. I did actually miss one, but it didn't matter. But yeah, I would just remember when everything was. Like I don't know why. And if something was coming up, I'd get this like negative feeling inside of me. And then I would actually, if I couldn't remember it, I'd verify. So that's mostly what I do. So I remember kind of everything that happened. And I vaguely know, I don't know which clip it is in, but I can find it. The things I write down are things that you have no hope of remembering, like what masses you used or certain being like, you weigh something 40 times and you get a different mass every time. There's no way I'm going to remember that. But so I'll write little notes on my phone, just like, final weight was this was this, or this went up to this temperature. But I also kind of like remember some of those details. Like if it weighs like 45.6 grams, I'll usually remember it's about 45. And then the other thing is in the video, I will sometimes just say it. So if I'm adding a powder, before I do it, I will just say the chemical and the powder. And I'll say the chemical name and the amount. So when I'm editing, I don't have to check notes. I can be like, okay, that's 100% what I did. And then I can just move on. So I do have some editing notes while I film. But for the most part, it's like I've just written down there's not that much to remember, honestly. And then when I see the videos, it kind of jogs my memory. Mm-hmm. There have been some videos that I look back like a year later and I'm like, what am I doing? That's kind of bad.
Yeah, it still seems like a lot of footage to have to pour over, but have a freakishly good memory. I mean, that's not really actionable advice, but
but I guess
obviously it helps you.
I spent so much time thinking about it and doing it. And then, like I said, I have the visual cue of the video that it's kind of like burned into my memory.
Mm-hmm. You lived it. Yeah.
But I think a lot of it's the video reminding me of what happened. If I had no video, I'd be absolutely screwed. I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't videoing. But if I just wrote notes down with no visuals, I would have a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
Well, I want to switch gears a little bit and get into your videos and your style because I thought of something earlier today, and then one of our community members, Linus, actually asked about it. And that's this kind of vibe that your videos are, where they have this entrancing quality that you get kind of locked into in a way that's soothing without, it's not like you're listening to new age music and getting a massage and like smelling scented candles. It's not like that kind of vibe, but it's like the science version of that somehow. And I don't know where or how you came up with that. So what process developed this science vibe for you?
So I'll start out by saying that I don't experience this because when I hear myself, I don't understand why people say that. But I think that's pretty normal to not be, a huge fan of your own voice. I think we spoke about this like a little while ago, maybe. The way that the way it kind of started was I had no editing skills. I had never edited a video really before I started the YouTube channel. And when I was putting the video together, I remember seeing other people's videos and going, I should probably put music in this. That would make sense to put music. But then I spent like an hour searching for music and I didn't like any of it. And it always felt weird. I didn't know how to edit it into the video. So I was like, instead of music, I'll just keep talking. So that's kind of how just the complete lack of editing skills is why I did it as primarily voiceover. But then I think to a certain extent, I got kind of like annoyed when there'd be like that annoying music in the background for a lot of videos. So I was like, no, I'm going to not use that. I'm just going to do voiceover. And then as I did it, I think I don't know. I just would hear things that I didn't like or be like, oh, that's kind of an annoying way of saying things. And just kind of over time, I just adapted the editing style to what I like. I remember one of the things I did was I didn't do it at the beginning. I kind of just like spoke in a microphone and threw the videos up. But I like timing a lot of stuff to what I say. So it's like I'll go into like the audio waveform. Well, I mean, it's in the editor. But then like I'll time the cuts on when I say certain things and just like once I realized I like doing that, then I just kept going with it because that's just what I thought was interesting and kind of fun. And then I think it was in like the toilet paper moonshine video that I started actually incorporating audio. Because before that, I just would do voiceover completely. But I liked adding that layer of real sound because I found it made it more immersive. I don't know. It's just slowly adapting what I thought what I thought was cool or what I liked. There was not too much of a conscious direction.
Do you have a background in music at all?
I think the short answer is no. But
okay.
if you have to do it like that, I think the answer is yes. I think it rounds up if you have to weigh it like that.
So like the short answer is like kind of then. My dad is a musician. And
okay.
So my dad's a musician and I did play guitar for my mom says I played it for like a week.
You literally have a case on the ground behind you. You have a hard case behind you.
But that's
as you tell us that you're not a musician.
Okay. So you got to hear my whole explanation. Or I'll just hide the evidence back there.
It's full of chemicals.
So
it's like the little kid with the chocolate all over his face saying he didn't eat the cake.
It's actually just a gun case. It's just a bunch of weapons.
Weapons, explosives.
Yeah, exactly. No, my dad because I had an interest in guitar just because my dad, how kids just kind of like what their dad does. So he got me a guitar for Christmas, I think when I was like 10 or 11. I did some lessons, but I kind of lost interest because I was a kid who just, every week was a new interest. So I played guitar for a bit and then I just kind of got bored. I remember getting really mad because I couldn't play a Blink-182 song. And so I kind of quit. And what's funny is my brother took my guitar and then he actually became really good at guitar and then played a lot since then. But that I didn't do music after that for like years until high school when I just took it as like an extra. I played the saxophone. But I was never really into music. And then I kind of didn't do music again until like probably like 2 years ago when I got a guitar because I just felt like I wanted to get back into it or actually get into it. But I did hear I don't have a zero background, but I wouldn't call it an actual background.
You definitely have a familiarity, though. From everything that you just explained, you're not divorced from music.
No, that's why I said like it's not fair to say I don't have a background, but I think familiar is like is probably the best way to describe it.
It's in your family. I mean, well, I asked because it's just like so many YouTubers have musical backgrounds. So when you're talking about the way that, for instance, you're lining up cuts with like words that you're saying and like looking at the waveform, like that's very musical. Like there is a rhythm to editing that I think often allies with the rhythm of music. And I mean, Matt and I have talked about this even with Vsauce 2 videos where in a lot of ways you can kind of say like, okay, here, we're introducing this and then here's sort of the verse here. We need a bridge here. You sort of can think of the structure of a YouTube video quite often, or at least I do. And it seems to me a lot of the YouTubers that we talk to on this podcast have musical backgrounds. So whether they're like conscious of it or not, there seems to be a major advantage, at least, to people who have musical backgrounds, but then also some other interest, whether it's chemistry or math or who knows. But having that undergirding musical rhythm sort of in their bones, the way that you do, man, there's an advantage to that.
It does. We were talking, Kevin and I were talking a couple weeks ago about a piece written in the New Yorker in 1960, which, by the way, by the way, Kevin, so a little aside here. So this is by John Updike. He was a very famous novelist, but he wrote a baseball piece about Ted Williams' last game with the Boston Red Sox, and it's called Hub Fans Bid Kid Adieu. They did change it back. Somebody shamed them on Twitter about changing the title from Hub Fans to Boston Fans.
They changed it back because of you?
Somebody shamed them for taking a 62-year-old classic piece of writing and changing the title for clicks.
Yeah, somebody named Matthew Tabor shamed them for changing the title. That's amazing.
But regardless of whether you're into sports, this is a piece that literally everybody should read, because it's a man watching a baseball game and talking about primarily Ted Williams, but there is this extremely odd sense of poetry and rhythm to the writing, which it's shocking that you would feel this rhythm in an essay as opposed to something like a poem, and it's that same sense of being a very musical thing, despite it being an essay in the New Yorker, and that sense of rhythm and beats and weight as well, volume too. Some things, even in writing, are very loud, and others are very quiet, and it's like that in a YouTube video too. The pace, just everything is very, very musical, and so the stuff that Kevin is talking about here it's present in virtually everything that you create, right down to, this is a little weird, but I was grinding a ton of meat 2 weeks ago. I bought 80 pounds of chicken. I was prepping it and grinding it, and there is absolutely an optimal rhythm to feeding a meat grinder. Okay, it seems odd, but there's a rhythm with your body in feeding the meat in so that it grinds consistently and doesn't put undue stress on the motor, which is just a KitchenAid. Congratulations to Demetrius in the community, by the way. He got his first KitchenAid mixer. He's an adult now. But yeah, all of the things that you create, whether
only
it's
in TCU will you get a shout out for getting a KitchenAid. It's so funny. I love it. It's so great. It's so weird, but it's so good.
But there really is a sense of rhythm and timing and volume, and just in absolutely everything you do. And I bet if you think about whatever your hobby is, whatever you enjoy doing, think about the rhythm in it. Even if you're not into music, you don't have a background in it, think about the songs you do like and the way that you feel your way through listening them. You probably feel your way through doing everything you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually I do definitely agree with that.
I know just anecdotally that Jake from Vsauce 3, he would listen to music for hours to get an inspiration for a video, which seems really bizarre. It's like, how does listening to musical beds, which is what they were, he listened to music beds for film and TV and stuff like that. Not like pop music, but the type of music that you would put in a video.
The famous drummer from the Who's?
Yes,
is that who you're referencing right now?
Who's drummer, Jake Roper.
Okay.
Yeah, he would just sit there and listen to music for hours, and eventually something would hit him in a way that he would be like, oh, this makes me feel like making this type of video. I don't know. It's odd, but that
I can kind of see
part of his inspiration.
Like, I can see how that would work. Just because, like, if you're just listening, like when you first said it, I thought you meant like you did clarify by saying not pop music, because like I don't see how that would work. But if you just listen to it and you kind of, because the music will create a certain emotion, and it's like if you then just have kind of ideas floating through your head, I can see how you can potentially map certain ideas to certain emotions, and it can make you think about things differently or help you come up with different ideas. I personally don't think that would work too well for me, but maybe there is one parallel. Like I get a lot of ideas when I'm watching just other stuff, which I think is potentially, maybe a similar thought process happening. So it's like I could watch a random movie or something, and there's a certain scene, and I'll just go, I need to do something like this. Like I need to somehow adapt this to what I'm doing, and because I want to create this feeling or this whatever in my video. I don't know. I feel like it could be kind of similar.
Do you have an example top of mind of that correlation or
No,
that causation, really?
honestly, no. But when I do watch
Uh,
content, pretty much when I always, like, whenever I'm watching any form of content, I am in my head consciously thinking about if there's anything I can learn to adapt to what I'm doing.
mhm.
So it probably happens more
Yeah,
often than I think of, like, than I even remember. Maybe I should write things down.
You don't have to.
No,
We
no,
already went
no.
over this. It's all up here.
No, I forget a lot
No,
of stuff.
I was just hoping there was some like extremely bizarre example of like, yeah, like I was watching Driving Miss Daisy and it made me think of like melting a baseball bat. You know, like,
Well,
something very bizarre.
I guess it would be, like, again, I don't have like a specific example, but I could, like I said, I watched, let's say, a film, and there'll be a certain scene where it's kind of like the impact of that scene and the emotion. I was like, how could I replicate this in a video? Whatever scene that might be, then I will come up with, I'll scour in my head different ideas that I've wanted to work on, what could fit, and be like, oh yeah, okay, this could potentially like kind of relay that same whatever I saw in the whatever I was watching. Very vague, but I wouldn't immediately connect it to the side, like the project. The project is kind of like how I would get to that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the creative process is really hard to identify, and it is this weird magical thing that, when you talk about it that way, it sounds pretentious, but it's like, well, I don't really know how else to explain it. I'm sorry.
I think,
Yeah,
I think the problem is, and I learned this I think what helped me a lot was when my brother has worked with me since 2018, but then we hired a friend in 2020, and he didn't have a lot of experience with just content creation. He had like almost none. So I was like, it's okay. I'll just basically, I don't mind. I'll teach everything. Like whenever it comes up, we'll talk about it. But I became like very aware that I couldn't express myself. It's just kind of like, this video is bad. And my friend would be like, okay, well, why? Because I watch it and I don't think it's good. Like, you don't really have an answer. But then he's like, well, how am I supposed to edit it differently? If you just go make it better.
Yeah.
So it really forced me to have to explain to him my own creative process, which took a while, but I think it did help a lot. So I'm actually able to explain a lot, but then like the deeper like layers of how I come up with certain things, I tried to explain it to him. I think I'm clear, but he just says it doesn't make any sense. So
Is that something that you had to go through, Kevin? Because when I started doing things with you, I didn't have, I don't have the background that you have in anything visual or audio at all. And you would have to tell me all sorts of things that were completely foreign to me. And you probably hadn't had to tell people who didn't have the experience that you had. Was there an adjustment that you had to go through?
Sure. I think that yeah. I mean, to your point, with any of this, when you're working with somebody else, all of a sudden you're forced to create a grammar for something that is intangible. It's like, well, now I have to create like the grammar of my creative process, where to you it's intuitive. So all of a sudden, this thing that is intuitive has to become articulated, and holy cow, that can be a tough process to bridge that gap. So oddly enough, I like that process though, because that's how I think about everything. Like I always like to think of like, well, why? Like, why do I like this, or why do I think this sucks? And I remember I just ask why about everything, and I have for a really long time. I remember a conversation years and years ago. This is going to sound like a total non sequitur, but it really does lean into this discussion. And that's, a girl at work was telling me that she hated one of our coworkers. I hate that girl. And she used more colorful language than that. And I would ask her why, like, what did she do? And she'd be like, I just don't like her. I'm like, okay, yeah, like I understand that you don't like her, like you hate her, but like, why? Like, what did did she do something to you? Is it like the way that she dresses, or she interacts with somebody else, and why? And after like the fourth time of me trying to like chisel away at like understanding why she hates this girl, she just threw her hands up and told me I was weird. She's like, "You're so weird. Why do you keep asking me why? Like, you're so weird." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right. I guess that I'm weird because that's how I think. Like, I always want to understand the why of whatever. It's interesting to me. Like the emotion is not really that interesting to me because anybody could have an emotion. There's no depth to emotion. It's just surface level. It's like, okay, well, where's that coming from? And it's like, how did you arrive there? And a lot of people are like, "You're weird." I'm like, okay.
How did the HR meeting go the next day?
No, luckily there was no HR. I mean, I was just in a friendly manner.
You weren't asking anything crazy at all.
I was just wondering.
I don't think that's
I guess
not,
that
you were
makes
showing
me
an
weird.
interest in why she felt that way.
I think
No, it really isn't.
I think that's the one thing that's tough. Like, I totally understand why you ask why, because if I put myself in her shoes, it's like, why would you want, like, I'd be uncomfortable disliking someone and not knowing why. It's like, then how do you fix that problem? Because you now have a coworker you don't like, but if you don't ask why you don't like them, then what's the solution? You just kind of feel uncomfortable all the time. That's it. And then,
Hating first and then figuring out why later seems like a tremendous burden. But it seems hard to do.
It totally makes sense. Like, I mean, in general, like I think everyone has had experiences where you see a movie, you see something, or if, for example, you meet somebody and it's kind of like you just go, that guy, man, that guy just bothers me. But you think about it for a bit and you're just like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, and you might go, yeah, he was a kind of like not a nice person and that's what bothered me. Or you go, okay, no, just like, he bothers me because he reminds me of a guy who wasn't nice in my past, but that's not his fault. He has nothing to do with that. So you kind of just like, you move on, you forget about it and go, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And then you can just become like, I've had that happen before, and you just become good friends with the person. And then you kind of reestablish that, I guess, subconscious thought pattern. And then you no longer have it. But if you don't question it, you just don't like the guy or the girl or the person just for no reason. You're just like, and that's it.
Yeah. There's a really neat blend in there. One of you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours stuff earlier. He had another book called Blink that was about the phenomenon of really figuring things out in your brain without realizing that you're thinking about it. When you have a level of expertise that you can see something, you don't even know you're seeing it, and you draw a conclusion about it. I remember one thing in his book was about a tennis instructor who could predict if a serve was going to be a fault as the ball was being thrown up in the air. He had a tremendous success rate at predicting that from seeing it. And he didn't know what he was seeing.
He just felt it.
To do that. Yeah, he knew it because he'd done, however many years of instructing. And at one point, the game of bowling has changed a tremendous amount since I was familiar with it. But at one point, I could see the ball come off somebody's hand and know if it was going to be a strike, and if it wasn't, how bad the leave was going to be. Because at a point, you've just seen so many of a thing that it's happening. At the same time, if it's like the saying, if you always go with your gut, you have shit for brains. Well,
I've never heard that before.
Oh, you don't?
No.
We've traveled in different circles. But both of these things are true, right? Where you've got to trust yourself and let all sorts of things happen, whether it's creative or whether it's judgment. But you also have to jump in and start questioning yourself too and thinking about it. Otherwise, you wind up being, the girl who hates somebody and they have no idea why, and they just run with that. How many things do you miss out on because you don't question yourself? So it's a really odd dichotomy to me, where you have to be really good at both things and really comfortable doing both.
Yeah, I think it's a very tough thing to do too, because even when you go to one extreme end, you get to like, the mental illness part, where it's like people who've had horrible traumatic experiences and they develop something like PTSD. It's like they just see something that's vaguely related and it just has a horrible response. And it's like, obviously that's bad. So you have to like train your way slowly out of that. But it's like, how do you stay in the middle of like like you said, you see something that you feel is bad and you're like, okay, that's a bad thought. I'm going to train my way out of this. But then there's another one that you see is bad and go, okay, that is a bad thought. I shouldn't do, or that's a bad thing. I shouldn't do that. Like, how do you differentiate between the two? And sometimes it's like almost impossible. And then so you just do it and then you regret it later.
Well, to button that earlier thing, I think that the girl just wanted me to agree and say, yeah, I hate her too. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And just leave it at that. And me poking and prodding was just annoying.
Did you hate her, or you thought she was fine, the other girl?
No. I had no opinion almost one way or the other. She's fine. I don't know. She's fine.
Yeah. So she came to the wrong person.
It did not work out for her. Didn't work out for me. It was a pretty awkward moment that I am now talking about on a podcast like a decade later. So I know that we have a lot of questions from our patrons. Should we go to that? Because I know that we need time for that.
We can jump into that, but I'm going to start with one of my own. Because, Kevin, you mentioned somebody having $2,000 and wanting to get started. I want to alter that question. Nigel, I have a $20 gift card to Walmart. How do I get started in chemistry?
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it all depends what you want to do, right? Because there's some projects that are... I want to do cool things that interest me. Yeah. Does that help? So I'm saying that, like, it's kind of with any hobby. If you want to do anything mass scale and huge, you're going to need a budget. So you can that could be a future idea. So you have to kind of like keep your expectations of, you're not going to... If you have $20, it's like you can't afford very much. But you can do. It's like off the top of my head, it would be hard to think of exactly projects that you can do with $20. I'd immediately say not much glassware. So you're probably going to stick to like cups, like mason jars, which would mean that you shouldn't really heat it up because they might crack. So something room temperature. Probably some sort of extraction. Like one of the early things that I did was. One thing I thought was fun is just brewing alcohol. And then, I thought the distilling part was more fun. But if you brew it, you can just drink it, I guess. I don't really drink alcohol. But I still thought it was interesting that you can turn sugar into something else. But I feel like a lot of people will think that's lame. So what I'd actually just go with is probably some sort of extraction. And one of the earliest things I did was just a chili pepper extraction. So I just bought, I think like habaneros. I dried them in the oven, mulched them up in a blender. And then I just put them in a water bottle, a glass water bottle with some acetone, soaked it for a while. And then I evaporated the acetone and I had this like super concentrated pepper oil. And that's how I kind of started everything. And I think you can do that with, I don't know, $2 of acetone. And I had a leftover glass water bottle.
Yeah, that's good. That's a $10 one. I don't know what I'm going to do with my other $10 at Walmart. Because you just described like a $2 bottle of nail polish remover, a couple of chilies, and a mason jar.
And what I did to add an extra layer is I went to the dollar store and I bought a thing that you could kind of put liquid into and you could pump yourself. I actually have there's a video of this on YouTube. So I mixed the pepper oil, I think with like water and a bit of ethanol. And then I shook it up and put it in like a thing that you could pressurize yourself. And then I sprayed it. So it was like you made like pepper spray or something. I didn't test it on anyone or myself, but that's an extra step that cost me, I think, $3. Probably just look at any of my early videos. I had no budget, except when I used chemicals in the lab I was working at. That's not fair.
No, but you definitely just pulled out a decent chem lab from a $20 gift card, so that's good. Now you did talk a little bit about dissolving a hot dog. Mime brought it up because I don't know if you're aware of Kevin's love for hot dogs.
I did not know.
But what
might I recommend twitter.com/Kevin Lieber? Let me just promote that to all of our listeners who need hot dog content.
You had a good tweet about Capri Sun filled with hot dog
wiener water.
That was good. Wiener water.
Wait, you have a fascination or a love of hot dogs?
I just find them very funny. I like to eat them as well, but I just think that they're hilarious.
Oh, so they're more funny than they are good to eat.
I think they're on equal grounds there. I don't eat them as much as I would like to because they are extraordinarily unhealthy.
Kevin, I have a question for you. If you had to give up one thing out of these two, which would it be? You can never laugh at hot dogs again, or you can never eat hot dogs again and continue to find them funny.
Oh.
Which one would you choose?
I'd rather find them funny. Because
You'd really rather laugh at hot dogs than eat them?
Yeah. Because I can, there's not that, I find hot dogs consistently funny, and I can eat plenty of food that will satisfy me and satiate me just fine. But hot dogs I find so uniquely funny and safe. Like, they're safe to joke about, and they always will be. There won't be, like, I'll never get canceled for my hot dog jokes. So there's like a comfort as well as like a consistent humor in them. This, I could go probably for an hour. We could do a whole podcast about this, but I think there are like very few things that are as funny and people will laugh at almost universally than hot dogs. I truly believe this. Matt has muted and he's like dying on camera, but this is true, and I have thought about it a lot.
So you think they're overall really funny, or just funny as a food, like compared to other food?
Both. I mean, both. There's so many funny things you can do with them. Even just, I've found so many tweets recently of just colored hot dogs. So like Easter or like Halloween colored hot dogs. Like you would dye Easter eggs, you dye hot dogs.
Right.
That is funny. Like, just like a blue hot dog is hilarious.
I will agree.
Do you remember Pee-wee had the green weenie? Did you ever see that?
Green weenie? What's that?
Yeah, he had a bag of stuff on his original show, and he brought out a green hot dog, the green weenie.
I don't
big
know
green
what
weenie.
The green weenie is
Yeah.
at all.
So yeah, I'll have to show you Pee Wee Herman's big green weenie stuff, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, for no good reason, a green hot dog becomes very, very funny.
Yep. There's not a lot of objects that are as versatile. Versatile and
I will
funny.
back up what you're saying by, because you mentioned colored eggs. Colored eggs aren't funny. And like, if you just were to color a lot of other foods,
no, they aren't.
They wouldn't be funny. You just either be gross, or you kind of like, oh, okay, I guess that's like just that food, but a different color.
Huh.
Yeah, like a blue banana.
Yeah.
And bananas are phallic, so it's not just the fact that it's phallic, because you're just coloring a banana. No one's laughing at that. Yeah, if you just made
like a blue banana, people would be like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. Yeah, but it's not funny. No, you're right. Yeah, no. This Halloweeners, the black licorice flavored hot dogs, in the episode chat, the green and pink and orange hot dogs. These are funny. Like, they're enjoyable to look at in a way that if I saw a blue banana, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. That's weird, but I wouldn't find it entertaining.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the chemistry a little bit. This one's from the user formerly known as W Quiz. The name has been changed for tonight to NileRed. The question is, what is your favorite S group element and why?
It's a very specific, what's it called?
That is highly specific.
Am I obliged to have one? I
don't think you need one.
So what do I have to choose from? Just pulling it up. I was like, oh God, I'm blanking. What's an S group element? No, I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like it's better. So I was just gonna cop out and say, like, none of them are my favorite. I don't know. Like, when I look, I just don't really I'd say it's better. If I have to choose out of all of them, what do I like the most? I don't really have an answer. They all.
Is there one that you just abhor? You absolutely hate this element? Let's go more general. What about all the possible elements? You gotta have a favorite.
So it's like, that's why that's easier to answer
across the whole spectrum.
All of them. I mean, I think I've said it in a video before. Like, one of my favorite ones, I just like bromine. I like just because it's like a dark orangey black liquid. So it's just kind of freaky and weird. I also like mercury just because it's a liquid metal, and I think that's cool. But I feel like bromine is probably the one I think it's just like fun to make, and I don't know, to look at. But it's like, sorry,
is it like the hot dog of chemistry?
No, it's not funny. It's more
hot dog of
it's
elements.
more scary to look at. I should just arbitrarily choose one
Well, I'm going to
of
work
these elements that I like.
Oh, that's a good idea. Just throw a
Yeah.
dart at the
Well,
board
so
and get one
I
to
don't want
stick.
to linger too long on the question, but the problem is it's like I find like they all have unique properties, but none of them are really that like I don't think about it and go, oh yeah, like I think that's like particularly cool. You have all like the alkali metals that just are a bunch of them that when you throw in water they explode, or light on fire. You have some radioactive stuff like radium, but maybe just straight up sodium. If I were to choose out of all of them, it's
Yeah,
like
that's
the
fair.
one of the least reactive, but it's just fun because you can just cut it. It's a soft metal. It's cool, but so out of all of them, I'll choose sodium. But overall,
that's fair.
none of them are my favorite.
Well, we're going to go back to bromine for a minute because that's referenced in Whifflebutter's question about whether you've shelved a project primarily due to the hazards of it. Because Whifflebutter says that they have a feeling that you've at least attempted to do something more dangerous than handling bromine.
Yeah. So I have a thing where I'm like, every good project either has one part of it that's either illegal or dangerous. And every time I'm like, why? Why does this have to be the case? Like, there's always something that there's just some sort of problem. So I wouldn't say I ever have truly shelved a project because of the danger. It's more like I put it on hiatus until I felt that I could handle it safely and not hurt myself. But like one of them, for example, I guess the one that's closest to that is I really want to make something that requires me to grow carbon nanotubes on I think it's like a piece of aluminum, which sounds complicated, but it's like in practice, it's not actually like that crazy. Just the way you do it is you heat up a piece of aluminum. I think it has a catalyst on it. You heat it up and you shoot acetylene and I think you do a mixture of argon and acetylene over it. But it's like, okay. I've not spoken to anybody who's ever done it before, but it's one of those things that if you screw up really bad, I think you can just blow up. So it's like, if you're near,
those seem like high stakes.
If you're near it, you will be like severely hurt if you catastrophically screw up. But the problem is I don't even know how to do it properly. So until I find out, I kind of have to shelve that because I don't really want to blow up.
No, that seems like a good one.
I guess one of the other ones, I haven't posted the
now.
video yet, but I bought a bunch of hydrofluoric acid to try to dissolve some glass with it. And I didn't work with that for a while because, you got to make sure that you're also not going to die. But eventually I felt confident enough and then I did it and I clearly didn't die. So.
No, well, that leads into an
everything
acid
leads.
That Jeff Strife. Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying, it's like you've planned all these out to weave through the questions. But Jeff Strife, who Kevin did a little shout out to for being one of the OGs who showed up to the episode, wanted to know if you'd ever experimented with super acids like fluorantimonic acid. Anything like that?
I guess the closest I've gone to is just hydrofluoric acid, which is vaguely related, except hydrofluoric acid is a weak acid, but it's kind of part of the fluoroantimonic acid, if you look at the structure. But I short answer is like, no. I've worked with chlorosulfonic acid. I think that's considered, I'm going to look it up. I think it's considered like in the range of super strong acids. Could be wrong. One of those similarly related sulfonic acids I've worked with. It wasn't anything too crazy. I do want to work with it at some point, but I don't really know what I want to do with it, with the fluoroantimonic acid. So once I find like a purpose, I don't know.
I imagine working backwards with a lot of these things makes much more sense than working forwards from a thing.
Yeah. So it's like, I could just buy it, but then I'm like, I'm not going to just show it, hey, look, this is a really strong acid. Because if you don't show the right demo, it kind of doesn't get the point across. So you're kind of just not, I don't know. I would feel not really fulfilled making a video like that.
Well, we have another very specific chemical question And then I think, as I scroll through these, then I think you're free from the hyperspecific chemistry. But it's also from Jeff Strife, who by the way, has talked about some fascinating chemical things in the baby gang over the years. And this question is about thermite. So the last batch of thermite that he made says burn too fast, and he thinks that's because the aluminum was as fine as powdered sugar. What micron size for aluminum would be best for a reaction that you'd expect out of thermite?
I mean, that's a very specific question. I'm sure if I were a thermite expert, I would have a better answer. Honestly, I don't really know. I would say, like, generally, you probably want to have the same mesh size for your iron than you do your aluminum, just because then you could I could be wrong about this, but I'd assume you'd be able to more control how fast the reaction is. And then, like, the more powdered you get, I assume the more reactive it's going to be. So then you can determine it from there. But, like, I don't have enough experience with thermite to really give an actual number, unfortunately.
And that seems like a dicey one to just throw out numbers with.
Well, it's just very specific, and it's like I do not have enough experience. I've actually never set off a large amount of thermite ever. I've only set off like a very small amount, and it didn't even work very well. So I am far from a thermite expert.
Well,
I've had zero successful runs zero good runs. So I don't think my advice is very valuable.
Well, that does go into the next question one more time. You talked about things that you'd avoid because they were just too hazardous. So we talked about that. Risebread asks if you've pushed the envelope with anything. Have you sacrificed your safety for content?
So
have you decided to do something that was risky or dangerous to a degree that was greater than just being careful?
I mean, I say like yes and no. Because it's like, I also feel like saying risking it for content wouldn't be the best way to describe it. It's at the end of the day, I'll only do it if I want to do it. Mm-hmm. If it's good content, but I genuinely think it's like dangerous, then I won't. It's not really worth getting hurt doing something like that. I would say probably the furthest recently I pushed it was with the hydrofluoric. It just the whole process did not make me feel good. But it's like I also knew the safety measures and I set up as much as I could. But it's like if it goes wrong, regardless, it's just a disaster, no matter what. And like there's a few things that I've done where I'm like, if it just does, you put all the safety measures in place and I'm filming it how I want to do it, I'm aware of the worst case scenario and I've already accepted the outcome if it happens. But I won't do it if I'm like not willing to accept the worst case scenario. If that answers the question.
Okay, that's a fair line to draw. Yeah, no, I think it does. We've got a two-parter from Barflugnarvan. The first one is why not NileRed? Why NileRed?
Well, then I guess a follow-up question would be like, why would I have my name with red at the end? Well, because I could have been Nigel. I mean, I have a Nile blue, but it could have been not.
If you really love
like,
communism.
Why would I choose a random color? It was just chosen at the beginning as a random chemical that had not a chemical name. Because I wanted to upload a video and I just had to come up with something. And I decided to go with N,
Yeah.
something that started with N because my name started with N. And then that was, I don't remember even any other candidates. We just saw, I was with a TA when I worked in the lab and we just saw it and he's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I just signed up and that was it.
End of story. That's awesome. The real question here is about that movement on content from the long form stuff to the short form stuff. Have TikToks and shorts essentially replaced the Nile Blue channel, or is there a future on Nile Blue that's different?
So basically, it's to give all the details would be a long answer. I did the shorts because there's a lot of topics that I wanted to cover that you could never really justify making a whole video on. And by justify, I mean, like, I don't really want to put, I just didn't want to make a full video on it. It just didn't make any sense. For example, like the dropping a chicken drumstick into piranha. I'm not going to stretch that into a 10-minute video. It's like, doesn't need to happen. So it's like a 2-minute video or something.
True, yeah.
So I want to do all the shorts just to kind of get out of my system all of these things that I'd never done. I'd never done things like just blow up a hydrogen balloon. I hadn't done stuff that are common chem demos. So that's why I did the shorts. But after doing all the shorts, I kind of just don't, I feel like I've gotten my fix. So that's why I'm going back to doing the reds. And I'm also just going to continue posting the blue as they were, as the videos we had already just posted on the channel. And then the shorts will be posted occasionally on
that makes sense.
Whatever topic I find interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to throw to Kevin after this next one. It's from Dan the Latch, who, again, congratulations on the Film Festival Award. On Trash Taste, you touched on the majority of chemists being specialized in a certain aspect of chemistry, and that can somehow create rifts and lapses in knowledge about particular processes. Can you expand on that thought?
I forgot I even said that.
Why it happens and why it's such a problem.
For example, like when I was in school, I did a partial master's degree. My degree or my project was, I'm trying to remember. It was inorganic catalysis of one pot organic or one pot like multi-molecular organic reactions. I don't remember exactly what it was. Either way, it's so specific. What I was doing was like, I would work with 3 to 4 different catalysts. Like that's it. And I'd be trying to make the same type of molecule. And that's all I did for like 6 months. And it's like, it's an important part of chem. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are passionate about doing stuff like that. But it's like, you just end up using the same chemicals over and over, doing the same, very similar reaction. And so someone comes up, I saw it. Someone comes up when I was in that, and someone comes up to me and goes, "What do you know about this?" And I'm like, I don't, because I focus 99% of my time on like this. So you take classes at the same time to try to broaden your knowledge, because like what we mentioned earlier, you can come up with, if you get locked into just one way of thinking, you won't come up with new ideas. But so I met some grad students who had like a huge range of knowledge of lots of different reactions. But it's like they still kind of get, I think the most broad people are probably general organic synth chemists, because they need to know how to build molecules from the ground up. So they know a huge array of just different reactions. But even as I'm saying this, I'd be like, they don't know much about inorganic chemistry or like the physical chemistry stuff, because they might just not ever need to do it. And it's like, I have a friend who does organic chem, and my thoughts are going like completely convoluted here. But like, I have a friend who does organic chem, and I asked him about a reaction I was doing, and he goes, "Oh, no one does that anymore. I've never heard of anyone doing that, and I have no idea how to do that." And it's just because times moved on and they don't do that chemistry anymore. I don't know. I think it's impossible to have knowledge of everything. And like, as you get more into a project or into an idea, you're inevitably going to become, your general knowledge is going to not be like, it's going to narrow down. I don't know if there's any other way to really do that. So me on the flip side is I do a lot of general stuff, but like, I don't know specifics of a lot of things. So it's like a trade-off. That was a very rambling answer, but I hope it answered
and in our generation, it's not though. It's very coherent, and it actually reminds me of one of the most important things written about the topic that nobody knows. William Arrowsmith put out an article in 1966 in Harper's Magazine called "The Shame of the Graduate Schools," and that article is virtually identical to what you said now, 56 years later, where there is a change in graduate education that focused on hyper-specific research technicians. You know, it brought people to such an oddly honed fine point that they missed quite a lot of general stuff, and that's really not what the whole enterprise is about. And it can get very frustrating when you're expected to focus to such a shocking degree. And even with something like this podcast, we had an idea at the beginning when we started it, and we broadened that out as we went along, because if we'd kept a hyper-specific focus, it would have been maddening, and it wouldn't have been as useful.
I think it's just I don't want to cut you off. I just think it's an inherent problem. I don't think there's any way around it. It's like, there was the amazing time in chemistry where it's like, it's how you could just look under a rock and make a new discovery, right? It's like this guy just literally burns something and goes like, and does some tests and go, I discovered this new thing called carbon dioxide. It was hard because they had no knowledge back then, but it was, I guess, easier because even a small discovery was a major discovery. But nowadays, where it's like most of the basic stuff is discovered, you can't get around. You have to specialize, and it's like you start to, in order to even make any discovery or progress in a topic, you kind of need to know everything about this one specific thing. Otherwise, you're just not going to go anywhere. Like, I think it's just the result of our knowledge base as a society or as humans has grown so much that you have to spec out. Otherwise, you're just not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really tough situation because that hyper focus is necessary at a certain point, to make those advances. But then when you do that, you can miss those general things. And you mentioned having friends that did different things and all of that. That is hugely important. It's something that we bring up constantly on this show, is that when you are focused on anything, whether it's hyper focused or just kind of focused, other people can make up for the gaps that you've forced yourself into having. That's just incredibly useful to use the experience of other people to make up for those things.
Yeah, for sure. And I also wonder if there's like a little YouTube analogy that we could go off for another half an hour about like the hyper specialization thing, where in the beginning you could be general and now you have to be really specific in order to do anything anyone is interested in.
Yeah, I think that there is. No, but I think there's not to start something new. But I think I agree with you. There was a day where you could just film yourself talking in your room, say some stuff that's half interesting, but you're kind of the only guy doing it. So people are interested. It hasn't been done before. But it's like as time goes on and you get so many people doing so many different things that it's like you kind of have to be, digging up new interesting things. And the only way you find that is by, being more specialized or finding a very unique thing to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was watching earlier today on YouTube a recommendation that came up for somebody playing a Metroid song on piano. And I can remember a decade ago watching a YouTube video of somebody playing a Metroid song on piano would be like, wow, that's amazing. Somebody's playing video game music on a piano. Yeah. Like, that is so crazy.
Well,
and now it's
those
like
videos went viral.
Okay. Some of
the earliest ones where I remember people playing literally that. It was video game music on piano is something I used to watch all the time. And it's like, or on guitar.
Yeah.
Whereas like nowadays, it's just like, yeah, it's cool. You're a music guy on YouTube.
Yeah. The video had like 300 views and it was great. It was probably a 1,000 times better than the one that had a million.
I would say, to be fair, the guys who I watched who did that years ago, they were exceptionally good. And even I think to this day, people still talk about their renditions and their composition being one of the best, and then trying to get copies of it. So to be fair, it was good, but it wasn't like you post that nowadays, it'd get, maybe a few hundred K views. Back then was like, I think it was just like millions. It was like just one of the best videos out there.
Yeah. And it would be blogged about, and it'd be on BuzzFeed and Laughing Squid and everything else. It's like, wow, like Zelda theme song on violin. What'll they think of next? Well, let's end on this. So we've been asking our guests to answer this same question at the end of each episode. And the question is, what makes an interesting person in your estimation?
Oh, no.
How does somebody become interesting?
This is an interesting question. How much time do I have to give my my answer? 45 minutes, an hour? No. I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I think just somebody who, kind of like some of the topics we talked about earlier, like how you said, you always ask why. You're always looking for an answer. I feel like growing up, a lot of people, not a lot, people would occasionally tell me, like my mom, she'd be like, oh, like you're very, she would tell me I'm interesting. And I remember my answer was always, she's like, how are you so interesting? And I was like, she didn't say it like that, but it was like her, my grandma. And my answer was like, I just kind of ask why. So I just read things like that. That was it. I just had a curiosity. So it would be someone would mention a topic, they'd be like, mentioning, I'm just thinking about this randomly, about like a dishwasher. And I might be like, oh, actually, I was reading the other day about like this weird, obscure thing. And they would interpret that as me being like an interesting person. But I think at the core of it, I was just kind of curious and reading about just random stuff. So then I was able to just pull up just information that other people thought was interesting. And I don't know, I at least that's one branch of it, because obviously if you just have information, that doesn't inherently make you an interesting person. But
I like curiosity though. That's
I feel like that's the core of a lot of it.
Well, if anybody hasn't checked out NileRed's channel, please do. Even if you're not, like, you don't have to be a chemistry nerd to be just entranced and soothed by all of the different experiments and the things that you'll see. It's very, very visually appealing. I think I would categorize it kind of in like a science porn.
I want to say that.
Or are you okay with that?
Hey, you can describe it however you like. I would say, like, because you said people don't have to be chemistry nerds. It's like, I'm not a chemistry nerd, in my own opinion. Maybe other people think I am, but like, I don't think I am. I just think it's like chemistry just happens to be the tool to get to where I want to go and the interests that I have. So it's like, I see an idea that I think is cool, and it's like, oh, hey, chemistry is needed to get there. And that's kind of just why I like it. So I don't think you need to be a chemistry nerd at all. Yeah. To enjoy the videos, but sorry, maybe you need to be a nerd to enjoy them, but to appreciate, I guess, the idea, you don't have to be a nerd.
No, you don't have to be a nerd, but
you can be.
It helps.
If you want to be, you can.
We're all nerds too. It's okay. Yes, nothing wrong with that. So check out NileRed's channel on YouTube, on TikTok. Also, the Safety Third podcast. If you are in the market for a new podcast, check out the Safety Third podcast. We are out of here. We'll be back next week with Bobby Duke. Until then, we will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Chelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.